Nice. That's good they have it going for. They seem pretty good about it. Awesome. Well, we'll jump into backboards, but since you're the only one here, if you want to go and switch up what kind of coaching we're doing, let me know. Is there anything specific you want to work on?
No. This is going to be my first session on the board, so anything's fine.
Nice. Well, let's work on angle approaches for the backboards and seeing if we can get onto the rails with like the minimal effort, because that's always an important thing for your first days back on the hill. It's always like the rails are scary, so it's hard to like actually trust getting on the line. So we'll work on that a little bit today. Oh yeah. Yeah, the foot pain doesn't go away. What I usually do is I use my old pair of boots for like the first couple of weeks in the season before switching to a new pair.
Yeah.
Helps a little bit, because if you just go straight back to shredding after, yeah, it's definitely painful in the feet.
Yeah.
I broke in 2 small Burton Ions this year, right away out of the season, and it was dreadful. Ooh. Awesome. Well, we'll just warm up with just casual, maybe like some backboards into 50-50s. Just get it going. Oop. Trying to really focus on getting that nice ollie and setting your weight over the rail instead of trying to jump forward onto it. You don't want to be like having your knees over the rail when you jump on, because if your knees are over the rail, that's going to make you jump naturally forward. So what I like to focus on for just jumping over rails is, instead of putting my knees towards them, instead I shift my weight and keep stacked, so I go and tighten like the glutes. And that's going to give me a lot more of an up. Will let you go and get that little bit of ollie straight on. So that's something we'll focus on for right now. And for the back, instead of going and trying to shift our butt out over the rail, we're trying to sink lower into our heels. So then we can just pop straight on, pop straight off. All right, same thing coming onto it. And I'm going to try emphasize using a little bit of an ollie. And I'll ollie it off too. And if you want to warm it up, I'm going to go and do the same thing, but with a little bit of an ollie. That's just a fun way to go and get used to using some other parts of the board. And then, since we're going to be working on backboards, let's just go from the center of the board and work on some pivots. So I'm just going to go 50-50 and really focus on pivoting over top of my front foot. So that means bending the front foot and extending the back leg, because that's what we're going to pair to get a good backboard, is a nice top, and then we just go and pivot to the side. This makes it so we don't need to jump up at the rail. Instead, we're just doing our straight jump up like a 50-50, and then that pivot. And that pivot actually puts us like 6 inches onto the rail. So I can demonstrate that from the side of it. I don't actually need to jump back onto the rail. Instead, I can go, bend my front foot, and pivot over, and that puts your binding right on top of the rail. And what this also does is it makes it so you can load your front leg, making it so you can go and shift your weight and readjust. Where if you try to jump like backwards onto a rail of 2 feet, you're going to have sliding momentum. It's going to make you need to like shift. Instead of going and putting it straight onto your front foot, that lets you load all of your weight onto that foot. So that's what we're going to play around with right now. Going and trying to jump as little on as possible, and if we don't get enough on, we're going to load our weight over. So popping up on it, and then load the weight, and just pop off, reset. So right now, what you're doing is you're bending both legs a bit. You really want to go and keep your back leg straight, and you push it out. So you ollie up and extend. See how this leg's bending a little bit more, but my back leg's straight. So let's go back on the rail and practice that with just not adding a jump, just slipping. So pushing out. And that's going to give you a lot more torque and keep you a lot more stacked. See how this puts my weight set over, so I'm like in a proper squat position? That's only works if you go and set your weight over at front foot like that, because you go, shift right into it, and that's going to make it a lot more powerful.
When you say loading, like loading the leg that's on the feature?
Yeah, that means you're bending, loading your weight onto your front leg when extending your back leg, lifting it off. So your problem right now is you're jumping into it. You're trying to like jump and twist your body. Just jump into a 50-50 position on the feature. And now from here, just go and push out your back leg while counter rotating. Yeah. Here, watch this. The reason why you're not as stable here as you could be is because when you shift in, you're letting this knee cave in like this. See how when my leg's like this, I'm not very strong, I'm tippy. So you want to keep your back leg out, like straight pointed this way. Don't let your knee cave inward. Because that's when you shift your hips to the side. Yeah, that's closer. Try to bend that front foot a little bit more. So start in your stacked athletic position that puts your weight onto the balls of your feet, and then go and do the shift, pushing up the back leg but keeping this leg in the same position. Nice. Focus on keeping those knees apart. There you go. How's that feeling? Yeah, that's like the key. Here, I'll go. I'll go and do it switch as well. That's really the key, is making sure you get that disconnect so you can shift your weight on. If you go and start letting your knee come in, it's going to shift your hips this way, bringing your stuff together, and that's not a powerful stance. You really need it to be that spread out, straight leg, using the back foot as the push and the front foot as the pivot. So you pivot over that front foot, and that's what lets you pop it back while staying stacked and loading. Because when you're on a rail, if your legs are straight, you're not going to be able to balance and you're not going to have any control. So you really need to make sure you have enough bend and enough weight set over that front foot or whatever foot you're balanced on to have control. So just let's put some more emphasis on that. Starting in a stacked position, counter rotate when pushing the back foot, having it so we're strong, front leg pointed.
I think I like the switch better than I like it regular.
That's normal. Everyone has a preference of their foot. They either like being on their back foot or their front foot. When you're doing it switch, you're doing the same thing but over your back foot. So some people like it more. Really depends if you're a back foot. You prefer your back foot or your front foot?
My back foot.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But so yeah, just practice it switch. It's exactly the same motion where you go, bend the legs, counter rotate, pop up, and extend. And then when you're beside the rail, it makes it so you don't need to jump up backwards. You can just pop up, extend, and lets you go and pop easy. And then you can go and put more weight onto the foot and pop it over to the other side. And that's really important, is the load, because that's how you're going to start getting your pretzels and all those tricks more proper. Yeah, so that's why I'm bad at backboard same ways, but I'm good at backboard pretzels, because I don't like my back foot. Like if I'm doing a front lip, it's really hard for me to pop up and land on my back foot. I'd much rather pop over the rail onto my front foot. So maybe let's practice that really quick. Get into, toe side up a rail, and try to pop up front lip. Same principles where we're not jumping forward, instead we're just letting our board rotate. So we go, rotate, landing right on that back binding. And now let's try to engage that little bit of bend. So to get the bend, don't just try to squat down because legs have no strength that way. Instead, add a little bend in the knees and then shift your hips backwards like this. That's going to put you in a better squatting position. Not so much that your spine starts to arc, but just enough that you stay strong and stacked. So here's your little slight leg position, then shift the hips back, and that makes it so when you pop up, you have more weight loaded on this foot. Because if you try to straighten and bend like this, you're not going to have that balance. So we actually, when we add bend to our legs, need that little bit of hunch over while keeping the back straight. So I want you to give that a go. Bend the legs, shift the butt back just a little bit so you're angled like this. And that will make it so you pop up and you'll have a lot more control and feel a lot stronger. Because that's what we need to work on here is your rail approach right now is keeping your legs very straight. And I think that's because you're keeping your upper body too tall. So Yeah, let's try to do that again. Bend the legs a little bit. Nice. Bend the legs a bit, shift the butt back, sort of like you're taking a seat on a chair. And then the more you squat down, the more you need to hinge forward. So we're going to go just like a little bit in the background. So our chest, we want our nipples sort of like in line with our knees. And that'll make it so when you pop up, you're sort of hunched over if your weight's stacked over that front leg, making it so you're leaned forward on the leg, making it so you're using the stronger points of power on it. Here, let's move the bar away for a second and try to get into this position without the bar. Because once we can get this locked in, it's going to give you so much more balance on the rails. So let's go and practice it with switch backboards. Because that seems to be what you're more comfortable with, just you don't have as weird of an approach. So get into your switch position. All right, now, here, I'll do it sideways view. Add a slight bit of bend in your legs, not so much, but just enough that your weight's now centered over the balls of your feet. From here, your body will be completely straight, bent, but we want to go and take these hips and hinge them back a little bit. Keeping our spine straight, but hinge back. So then we're sort of in this position. Sort of like we're like trying to keep everything connected like this. I'd say like 45-degree angle down. And what this does is it makes it so when we pop up, our weight's now centered over the balls of our feet. Because you don't want to be tall and extended. That's why you're needing to be tall, because your balance point's here. But if you add that hinge, add that bend, then you're sucked in. That's going to give you the control. So let's just practice that a little bit. Nice.
Yeah, I feel like better when I jump up onto the feature. Like I would stand up. I feel like it's...
So that's one of the biggest mistakes people make on rails, is when they leave the ground, they're extending their body. They're popping up. And that's leaving them hyperextended. And once you're hyperextended, you can't use your core. So instead, what you need to be doing is you stay in your strong position and you let yourself ride off the tail. You hardly even need to pop, just a slight extension and then rotate. As soon as you extend fully, you've messed up the maneuver and you need time to reset. So when we're thinking about doing the rail, we want to go, have a little bit of bend in our legs, and our jump should be like this only. A little bit off the tail, like this. Notice how you're not going and fully extending your legs. You don't need to be like fully extending off the toes. Just a little bend to less bend, because we want to be landing here. And the more bend we have in our legs, to a certain extent, the better, because we actually have the ability to catch the rail. If you jump too high, you can actually lower your legs and catch the rail, helping you lessen the impact. Where if your legs are straight when you take off, then when you land, you have no choice but to land straight-legged, making it so you don't have enough balance and control, and you can't go and catch the rail sooner or later. So let's go and work on that a little bit. Just bend your legs. It can be switch or regular, doesn't matter. Don't worry about the board side. A little bit of a bend, and then a little bit of extension, making sure we're shifting our weight for our back foot as we leave. Not an ollie, but just leaving for weight over our back foot. It's a small motion, but this is actually way better than jumping with a full extension. Now let's pull the rail towards us, and let's practice this onto the rail. One sec, I'm gonna minimize the bend stir because the screen's not even here. Can I? Nice, all right. All right, so now we have our slight bend on our legs, and we're going to go and use that slight extension when shifting back with our weight set over. So that will make it so we just go and land up on the rail with that slight bend of the legs. Yeah, so try to do even less. Shift your weight even more over the feature with your upper body so you can jump on even less. You're jumping 2 feet at the same time right now, so try to go and add that little weight shift to your back foot. So you're leaving off your back foot. That was a little too much. You did a little bit of an ollie. You did a little bit of a what's going to throw you off balance. So try to just go and make it so you're doing your jump, but you're shifting your angle from straight to slightly over your back foot. And that's going to just make it so you come into the rail and get more naturally on it. You're utilizing more board and takeoff. Nice. Yeah, that's great to practice when doing the jibbing because it's going to be a lot more accurate to how you actually hit rails.
Yeah, that does make sense though. This moving board's gonna come first.
Well, what we're trying to do every time we hit a rail is keep our board on contact with the takeoff as long as possible because that makes it so we're going to be having our whole board length of extra height over top of a rail and length down it. Where if you just go and pop off early, that means the rail is going to be higher and it's going to be longer. So we're trying to maximize the amount of time our board's making contact with the snow. And we do that by shifting our weight slightly to the back foot, making sure that we're relieving off that tail. Not so much that we ollie if your nose starts to lift off a takeoff. So if you're going off a takeoff and the board's lifted past the angle of the jump, that means you did it too much because you initiated flex in the board. The goal is to just coast off it with that slight bend, slight extension, without having any flex in the board. So just shoop. So try to do that. Try to get the timing off your back foot without your board lifting up. If your board starts to lift, you did too big of a motion. Nice. I wanted to see you go and kick out your hips a little bit more. Out a little bit more, so you're still standing pretty tall and straight. Yeah, squat down a bit more. Yeah, exactly like you did there. Yeah, that's better. That one was good. You just let your back knee come in a bit, and that's why it didn't feel stable. So try the same thing with focusing on keeping your knees spread. Nice.
This is the regular side.
Yeah. You do it whatever side. Basically, we're just trying to unlock this extra bend in your legs because right now you're approaching the rail straight and like doing that overextension. What's making you just do the whole thing tall? What gives you way less control, where when you get that bend and you can get your weight over 1 foot, it gives you so much more room to pivot and control yourself. So we're basically here just trying to train your ability to go and bend down and feel more comfortable being bent. And the reason why it's feeling so hard is because you're also keeping your body too straight. If you just bend down straight, it's going to be unbalanced and feel unnatural. So that's why you need to let your hips hinge. So then your nipples are always staying like over your knees, sorta.
Yeah.
Like when I do a backboard, I can literally go down here. Let me show you this as reference. Oh. When I do a backboard, I hinge so much sometimes, I can go down and grab like this. The only way I'm doing that is by squatting down to a powerful position, hinging, and that's obviously over-exaggerated, but that's the general idea. When you get into a backboard, that's your balance point. You go and get on, and then you can squat down and shift forward and rebalance like that, instead of trying to balance like this, what's a much taller, much higher point. Instead, you drop your hips and sink back, and that lets you go and get a much more controlled, stable point of balance.
So much easier.
Don't worry about it. Let's try this to try get you in the position. Get into your backboard and try get it just stacked so you can hold it. You should be on these bars able to hold the backboard for basically an infinite amount of time. If you can't do that, that means we need to go and change something about your form. So, right now, the reason why you can't balance it right now is instead of having your weight shifted over your leg, instead you're letting your leg come in like this. So then you're like trying to fight with your knee coming in, and that's making it so your weight is spread, making it so you have pull. So you need to go and shift your hips out so you're stacked more over top of one leg. Think about standing on one leg. Let's actually try this as an exercise quick. Unstrap your board. And stand on the rail with your back or with your front leg, like you would be for a backboard. So notice here how you need to be like your legs completely straight, and that's the only way you're balancing. Instead, when you're on the rail, you have a little bit of cheat room, so you're sort of doing this. So I want you to try shift your knee to the left and feel how much harder that is to balance. Does that feel more like a struggle?
Yeah, not fun.
So that's the same thing that's happening right now when you're doing your backboards. So instead, you want to be in the stacked position right over top of the rail. Now from here, I want you to try hinge your hips forward and try squat down and touch your toe. You're going to need to add a proper bend. Nice. That's the kind of hinge we're trying to get on the rail. So we're going to pop up, get it, hinge, and then let ourselves lean forward a little bit so we're sort of balanced like this, more controlled for the backboard. So now you need to throw your leg back. That's because you're going and putting too much tilt forward. You can only tilt forward in correspondence with a bend in the legs. So you can do this even easier. Put your foot like on the ground and try squat down like this so your foot's supporting you. And here you'll naturally feel like your upper body going down. Sort of like think you're trying to pick up a bar. Like put your jib board on the rail and be like trying to touch the heel cap with keeping your back completely straight. As in like hinge forward but straight spine. So yeah, just trying to touch it with your knees out. Let me see. Yeah, that's starting to look better. I think maybe let's end it on that for now because I know my leg's starting to feel fatigued. How's your leg feeling?
My glutes are hurting.
Yeah. So we'll end it there for now. What I want to leave you with to think about for that motion is just think when you're doing squats, do some squats that are to 90 and then shifting to this leg. So you're just doing your normal squat down, butt out. Here's a side view, sort of like this, and then shift over to your leg. Then shift over to your left leg, and then you can go and practice doing a little jump up into it, jump up into it. You need to be careful and not do it when you're too fatigued because the knee's not something you want to be going and increasing your range of motion too much. But basically we're just trying to get you comfortable in your snowboard positions with your squat position. Because see, when I'm squatting, my knees are coming and going outward. That's what you want. You don't want your knees coming in because that's going to go and make your balance a lot harder. For some instances where your knees come in, like if you pull your hips for like a pretzel, but just for a backboard, we want to be stacked, knees out.
The butt out is definitely helpful because I have a lot of trouble with bending the knees.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say, Jan, just watching. I'm sorry, I'm not exercising today. I had a heck of a workout yesterday, and my legs are shot too. Honestly, I did something called the chipper. I'll tell you about it later. But watching you just now, though, yeah, I'm creeping today. But watching you there, right? Watching you there, though, you're bending at the waist a lot, but you're not bending at your knees very much, right? You're bending more at your waist, and your knee is almost kind of straight looking when you were doing it there, when you first grabbed in.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot.
So
bending the knees.
It's that ratio is bending the knees and hinging up forward. The reason why we're hinging forward is it lets us bend our knees more with keeping our balance. Because if we just try to bend our knees with keeping our back straight, we're going to fall backwards, you know? So we want to go and add that hinge forward. So instead of falling backwards, we're getting stacked more onto the rail. But if you start hinging too much more forward, it's going to make your hammies extend and it's going to straighten your legs like this. So that's why it's that fine balance of shifting down on that natural angle. And the best way to play around with that is just by doing squats. Getting your squat and seeing how you can get as low as possible when maintaining that stacked weight over the balls of your feet. That's the first step.
Yeah, because you don't want to land on the feature straight-legged. There's no shock absorbing.
Exactly.
All the time, and I tell myself, don't do that.
That's why we want to be approaching the features with a slight bender of the leg. And when we take off, we want to be shifting our weight so we don't need to fully extend our legs to get that height. Just that slight extension, but you want to keep a bit more bend because you always want the option to be able to reach down your legs and touch the rail. And you never want to be like locking your legs to do it, you know? You don't want to be like jumping up straight-legged because that's going to make you throw off. Instead, you want it that light so you can feel like you're catching it.
Got it. Yeah, thanks.
No problem. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like hard, and like obviously you're using your form, and it's been working. We're just trying to get you to that next level of stability, because I noticed you were struggling a bit with even just balancing in backboard position on the rail without the white piece. So that's telling me that there's something about your like squat down form that isn't really efficiently spreading your muscles, because you definitely have the strength to like get into this position and hold it. So that's why we need to figure out the proper hinge in your hips and get you comfortable with it, so then you can start utilizing your body in its like more efficient way.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew there was a lot that needs to be corrected. So
It's just a work in progress. The good news about that stuff is you can go and work on it when you're just like, you're doing your exercises, doing your squats. Just try to be mindful about how much you're hinging your hips and what feels natural. Because I'm just going to emphasize this one point. Your weight should always be aimed to be dispersed at the balls of your feet. If you start squatting down, your weight starts going to your heels, going to your tiptoes. That's off your stack position. Your weight should always be grounded into those balls of your feet. So you can always you should be able to lift up that and lift up your toes. You can't see, but really just the balls of your feet. I don't know if this is okay on camera, but I'm referring to these things.
yes.
Yeah, okay. My filmer Harry didn't know what I was referring to about the balls of the feet. So I was like, just making sure.
It's a pretty common expression.
Yeah.
It's a pretty common expression.
It's a common, okay. Yeah, so that's the center point. That's the money zone for like pretty much every trick snowboarding. You never really want to venture too far off it, because when you have your weight there, that's what puts that natural little bit of bend in your legs.
And why is it that I would find it, is this for most people, but why is it easier on the switch side? Because I don't seem to like on my...
People just have a preference either right foot or their back foot. So I have a really hard time loading the weight like that onto my back foot. No real reason for it. It's because I just prefer my right foot. You might be more dexterous and there might be some motions that you've like done in your life, or it could just be from birth that makes you prefer doing your weight over your back foot. When you say someone was like, all right, $1,000 if you can balance on one foot for like 10 minutes, would you pick your right foot or your left foot?
I don't know. It depends on what I'm doing, though. If you're asking me in ballet, it'd be my left leg. But then for some reason, I like it on my right leg here.
So some people are like that. So I know people for skateboarding, they're like, oh yeah, I'm goofy snowboarding, but regular skateboarding.
Yeah.
So it also changes. That's why sometimes you can determine where it comes from, but most of the time it's just it's like, why are you right-handed versus left-handed? It's just, well, I am.
Yeah, I'd say also it's probably just what you've done the most so far.
Yeah, well, what it could be
Yes, I mean,
is when you're riding, you might have started or got used to making it so your back foot's your pivot point. So when you're snowboarding down the mountain, it's really normal, especially when you're working on certain things, to be more either set over your back foot or more set over your front foot. And if you go and spend, tens of hours in one position, even if it's super slight, it's going to make it so that muscle and motion is a lot more trained and dialed in. So that's why I like my front foot, because I do all my rail tricks on my front foot. It's just the tricks that I learned have built me up to that point. So I'm really good at getting my hips stacked over that front hip. But for the back foot, I haven't really done as many tricks from that because it's just not what I trained. So then I struggle a little bit. And that means I need to cheat and rely more on momentum. It means I really can't do normal switchback boards, even though I can do really good switchback boards same ways, but that's because I'm coming over to my right foot. And I hear pros like Mikey Cicerelli is talking to, and he's like, yeah, I'm the same way. That's why I switch front board same ways, because it puts me onto my right foot. So even guys at the level of Mikey also have that preference of they like sliding on either the right foot or the left foot, and it's not in correlation to much else.
Okay, well, I'll ride with it then.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Train on it, and then you can work towards it. So that might mean that you want to go and spend some time focusing on the switchback board if it feels more comfortable. Because the approach is more tech, but then if you're more balanced on the rail, the approach can be worked on. You can work on that on snow. You can work on that on tiny boxes. So once you get that approach, then it might feel more comfortable when actually on the feature. something worth trying. That's exciting. You got snowboarding coming up. I'm thinking about doing a Japan trip and riding some of the airbags down there.
Yay.
But I'd prefer some real snow.
Totally should.
Yeah. No, if I do, I'll make some content for Snowboard Addiction when I'm down there.
Do
That'd be
it.
killing.
It's nice to be back. I had to like go away for a little bit, so it's good to be back.
Yeah, it's good. Hopefully we'll get some nice training groups going this summer. Keep the live sessions going because I really believe in the live sessions. It's just we might need to think of a different format to make them more accessible to people and more time flexible. But it's a learning process, so we're still going.
I know it's tough because I can't be like, hey guys, it's Monday for us here, but it's Sunday for you there.
Yeah.
But just the next few weeks it'll work.
But we're also going to be putting out a bunch of like snowboard focused jib along videos, and we're going to start making a bunch of them for Addiction Plus. So those will be a good way to go and train like the stuff we trained today. It won't be personalized. So like today, I changed the lesson to like tackle what I saw were some of the things you need to be working on. So it won't have that, but we'll still have like a little fun thing to train along to, so you can like build that muscle memory. What might be a solution for like being more accessible than the live sessions in the future. I'm going to end this recording real quick. Thanks everyone for watching. If you don't know, you can come join the live sessions every second Sunday. We do them consistently, and sometimes we do them every Sunday. Depends how busy in the year it is. But it's a great way to get coaching. As you can see, me and Janet have basically been having a one-on-one session. It's not always like that, but it's basically, if you have snowboard questions, you want to work on something, you can get some really tailored feedback. And who knows, hopefully it won't be this quiet for long, so come utilize it when you can and get that private coaching experience.